second way. So let's get an idea of what we're talking about. What if we're trying to add two mixed numbers, 2 1/3, that's how we write that mixed number, and we're adding to it 3 1/3. All right, so we're adding these together. Well, think about it in terms of pies or pizza. This is 2 1/3 pizza, so you have 2 full pizzas plus another third. Here you have 3 1/3 pizzas, which means 3 pizzas plus another third. So you have 2 whole pizzas here, 3 whole pizzas here, and then you have another third of a pizza and another third of a pizza. So the first way I'm going to tell you that you can do these things is you can add the whole numbers together, and then you can add the fractions together separately. All right, so let's go ahead and practice doing that. If we add the whole numbers together, 2 plus 3 is going to give me 5. And then we want to add the fractions together. Well, we already have a common denominator, so the 3 can remain because it's common. And then 1 plus 1, we can add the numerators as we have always been doing, is 2. And the answer to this guy is 5 2/3. It makes sense to you that if you have 2 pizzas here and 3 pizzas here, you're going to have 5 whole pizzas, right? Then we need to add the fractional parts. Here's a third, so we'll have 2/3. So if we add everything together, we should have 5 2/3. Makes total sense. So in method number 1 here of adding mixed numbers, you simply add the whole numbers together and you add the fractions together separately, and basically it's straightforward. All right, so let's go ahead and do the next one. What if we have 2 1/3 plus 3 1/4? 2 1/3, 3 1/4. All right, so we want to add these together. We know that we can add these whole numbers together, but we're going to run into a problem because these fractions, the 3 and the 4, we don't have the same denominator, so that's going to cause us a problem. So the way I want to show you to handle this is, before we start adding anything together, we know we can add these, but before we do that, let's handle the fractional part. We have a 3, we have a 4. So what common denominator can we choose? Well, we have to work on both fractions, and 3 and 4, immediately what should jump in your head is 12. 12 is something that 3 will go into, 4 will also go into it. So I can then take this first fraction and change it. The 2 stays the same. That's just the number of whole pizzas I have. The 1/3, I'm going to transform it. And I'm going to transform it by multiplying the top and the bottom by 4. The reason I'm doing that is because it'll make 12 on the bottom. And so what I'll have is 2 4/12. 1 times 4 is 4, 3 times 4 is 12. 2 4/12 is exactly the same thing as 2 1/3. All right? And then I'm going to do the same sort of thing to the bottom. The 3 will come along for the ride. The 1/4 will come here. And then I need to multiply this bottom number by 3 and the top number by 3 in order to give me 3 on the top, 12 on the bottom. 3 3/12. All right, what have we done? We have changed 2 1/3 into this fraction. We've changed 3 1/4 to this fraction. Now we have a common denominator of the fractional parts. We always know that we need common denominators when we add. So to add these mixed numbers, we add the whole numbers, giving us 5. Over for the fractional part, the 12 will just come along for the ride because he's common. 4 plus 3 is 7. So the answer is 5 7/12. And you try to see, can you simplify this anymore? The 7/12, you can't do anything more with it. You can't simplify it. The 5 is perfectly fine hanging out in front like that. So we leave it alone. So the easiest way, in my opinion, to add mixed numbers together is to add the whole numbers together and then add the fractional parts together. But you just need to know that when you add the fractional parts, you need to get the common denominator and do all of that stuff like we've practiced before. So you see, math is like this. We learn a skill, how to add fractions with common denominators, and now we're doing it with mixed numbers, but we have to use the previous skill. And so you kind of learn and apply each skill to the next thing as we go. Now what if we have 2 1/3 and we're adding to that 3 3/4? So we put a plus sign there and we add. So again, we look at the fractional parts and we realize we can't add them as is, but we also love the fact that it's 3 and 4. So we're going to use 12 again, and we'll transform the top fraction by making it 2 1/3. We'll transform that by multiplying top and bottom by 4 because we're trying to make 12 for the common denominator. So we'll have 2 4/12. That's for the top. That's actually the same as we had in the last problem. But this bottom fraction is a little bit different. The 3 will hang out here. The 3/4 will be here. and we're going to multiply top and bottom by 3 by 3. So we'll have 3 and 9 twelfths. All right? So now again we have two mixed numbers that look a whole lot better because the fractional parts have the same common denominator. So 2 plus 3 will give me 5, and the 12 will be in the denominator, and then we add the top. 9 plus 4 is going to give us 13. So this is the answer, 5 and 13 twelfths, but then we analyze it and we say, can we simplify this? Well, it's a little bit weird to look at, but what we have is the 5 is okay, but the fractional part, just the fractional part, it's an improper fraction. The 13 is bigger than the 12, right? The 13 is bigger than the 12. So let's just work with this. How do we convert this to a mixed number? Because any improper fraction can go into a mixed number, right? Well, the way you do it is 13 divided by 12 can go one time, and since 13 minus 12 is 1, we'll have a 1 left over, and it'll be out of 12. So we just converted this to the mixed number. So what we have is 5 whole pizzas plus another whole pizza plus a fractional part. So what you end up getting is 6 and 1/12, and that is the final answer, 6 and 1/12. All right, so make sure you understand the concept behind what's going on here. We're not, that's why I chose this problem to be very similar for the last one, so you can kind of see what's happening. We choose the same common denominator, but this fraction is different, so the top number is different. We add the whole numbers, we add the numerators, but anytime you see an improper fraction, you're free to change it to a mixed number. Because this improper fraction really represents something more than 1. 13 twelfths is more than one whole pizza. In fact, it's 1 and 1/12 of a pizza. All right, and so since this represents more than a whole pizza and we already had 5 in front anyway, we can just add the whole numbers, no problem, making 6 and 1/12. That's how you handle that situation when you're adding mixed numbers together. It pops up frequently when you'll end up with an improper fraction over here that you just need to kind of take care of. But we're using all the skills that we learned in previous lessons. All right, so let's just kind of fly through a couple of additional ones here. What if we have 5 and 1/3 plus 1 and 5/6? And we're going to add these together. Well, this is a little bit simpler because I see I have a 3 and I have a 6, and I like the way that looks because I know that I only have to work with the top fraction because I can convert this guy and make it 5 and 1/3, and all I need to do is to multiply this by 2 and this by 2, and that's going to give me 5 and 2/6, because 1 times 2 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6. The reason I multiplied by 2 is now I have a 6 here. This fraction, I don't have to change at all, 1 and 5/6. Again, you're just trying to get a common denominator. In this case, all I had to do is manipulate one of the fractions in order to get a common denominator. So when I add these, 5 plus 1 is 6. For the fractional part, the 6 is common, so it'll stay there. 2 plus 5 is 7. So I get 6 and 7/6. So then I look and see, can I simplify this fraction? Well, the 6 is fine here, but I have an improper fraction here, the 7/6. So let me work with just that. How do I revise that into a mixed number? Well, 7 divided by 6 can only go one time. There's a remainder of 1, and we put it over 6. That's how we convert to a mixed number. All right, so we have it in mixed number. So we have a 1 and 1/6. We already have 6 out in front here, so what we end up actually having is 7 and 1/6. That is the final answer, 7 and 1/6. So again, it's the same sort of thing. Check and see, do you have an improper fraction left over? If you do, just deal with it and add the whole number to get to the final thing. And this will happen quite frequently when you're adding mixed numbers together. Okay? All right, the next problem is 3 and 2/3 plus 2 and 1/4. We're going to add these together. We love 3 and 4 because we know we can find a common denominator of 12 between the two there. And so when I change this one, it'll be 3 and 2/3. And I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by 4 because this will give me 3 and 8/12 when I do the multiplication here. And then this one gets transformed to 2 and 1/4. And I'm going to multiply this one by 3 on top and bottom because, again, I'm trying to reach a common denominator of 12. So I get 2 and 3/12 when I do the multiplication here. So now I just simply add, because now I have 12 in both places. 3 plus 2 is 5. The common denominator is 12. 8 plus 3 is 11. All right, 5 and 11/12. I cannot simplify the fraction. The fraction is not improper. Everything's fine, and that's as far as I can go, so I get 5 and 11/12. That's the final answer. All right, now the last problem of this section is going to be 5 and 2/5, and I'm adding to that 2 and 1/3. All right. So I look at this and I see that my fractions have a 5 and a 3, and I start thinking about what would be a good common denominator with 5 and 3. I wouldn't want to use 10, for instance, because 5 goes into 10, of course, but 3 doesn't divide into 10 evenly. I can't really use 12 for the same reason, because 5 doesn't really go into 12. So I keep going up. Eventually I get to 15, and I realize that 5 will go into 15 and 3 will go into 15, so I'm going to use that as my common denominator. So I will zero in on that. This fraction will become 5 and 2/5, but I'm going to transform it by multiplying by 3 on top and bottom, which will give me 5 and 6/15 when I do the multiplication. Again, I did the multiplication here to give me a 15. This one will be 2 and 1/3, and I'm going to multiply this by 5, again, because I'm trying to reach 15. So what I will have is 2 and 5/15 here. And I will add these guys together. And the whole numbers are added together as usual, giving me 7. The fractional part has a 15 in the bottom, common denominator, so it comes along for the ride. 6 plus 5 gives me 11, and I get 7 and 11/15. I cannot simplify this further. I can't divide it to make it simpler. It's not improper, so I just circle it. That's the final answer.